We're in record prediction season. That's what August is about. It's about fall camp. It is about learning depth charts, and it's about understanding what the best case, worst case, and most likely record projections are for your team. And tonight we're doing Clemson. Garrett Riley is an important name here. That was the offensive coordinator at TCU last year. They literally go to the national championship. And now Dabo pulled off, I thought, the biggest blockbuster assistant coaching hire of the cycle. He got Garrett Riley. Total inflection point for this program this year. I don't think I'm telling you anything your local preview magazine's not telling you, but they're right. This is an inflection point because the thing about it is we've seen Clemson win a whole lot. And then we've seen them not drop off a cliff, but come back to earth just slightly the last few years. For example, Clemson, post-it pop, Clemson has more losses the last 3 years than the previous 6 years combined. So, yeah, there's been a little regression there. That's to be expected. That's not the end of the world. They think they've righted the ship there. They think they made the necessary moves. Now you start to find out, do they have the culture to sort of re-elevate themselves to the top? Or was it more a product of having a Brent Venables or a Tony Elliott? Was it more a product of having elite pieces? And when they lose the elite pieces, they can't reload. They actually do have to try and rebuild. That's what an inflection point's all about. So we go into this year. Here's the way we do it on this show. Best case first. Best case record for Clemson this year is 12-0. If you're going to be favored in every game you play, which they're projected to be right now, your best case is an undefeated season. That's pretty cut and dry. This would include them obviously having the offensive acquisition of Garrett Riley pan out. Cade Klubnik kind of becomes this year's Max Duggan. That was the quarterback that Riley had there at TCU last year. I think it would be very important in this scenario for Clemson to flex home muscle, which they don't get to do a lot. They're always really good at home, but they seldom have these massive national implication games at home. But they got them this year. They got FSU at home, game of the week in week 4. They got Notre Dame at home, November 4th. Huge game there. And so those two are two of their biggest ones. They're two of the tightest spreads they'll have all year. So they need to flex that home muscle. You got the revenge game at South Carolina at the end of the year. Wide receiver really needs to shine for them to go undefeated. Defensive line, that depth we talked about, needs to go from just names to proven production. If that happens, it's not crazy to suggest there's a 12-0 there for Clemson. Now, this is where it gets really, really sketchy. Dare I say sketch-af. What is the worst case for Clemson this year? I had to go all the way down to 7-5. You heard me. I said worst case. 7-5 would be wild. That would be like earth-shattering. And it would kind of shake the foundation of the ACC in the process. But follow me here for just a second. So what if those names and depth along the defensive line don't pan out? So Clemson does not own the line of scrimmage defensively. What if at the same time, remember this is worst case scenario, at the same time, the Garrett Riley hire really isn't the spark that starts the fire again that you expect offensively? What if Cade Klubnik and Riley just never really mesh? What if, in other words, we see sort of a Josh Gaddis, Tyler Van Dyke thing like we saw at Miami last year? Remember how everyone was going to was convinced that was going to be great, and it just wasn't? It was a tire fire, actually. I got all the faith, hope, and confidence in the world in Garrett Riley. I'm just saying, if we're going to acknowledge best case, there's a worst case where that happens. They've been very portal resistant. What if that catches up to them? What if you're watching Clemson games and several of them are tight and they just can't flex their roster against you like they used to be able to? And also, there's something out of their control that plays into worst case, not just injury. That's always the case when it goes to the worst it could possibly be. What if the ACC collectively is just a little bit better? What if Miami's a little bit better than expected? What if Duke in week 1 is better than expected? They go to NC State as well. They got UNC. They got South Carolina, not a conference game. But if all that were to happen, there's a 7-5 out there for Clemson. But that's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about the most likely scenario. The most likely scenario for Clemson this year is 10-2. I got them going 10-2. My instinct is 11-1 because my instinct is when you have a little bit of a setback and then you make very radical change like Dabo Swinney did, pulling the lever on his own internally elevated hires and going with Garrett Riley, it's just instinct for me to say, all right, they'll be right back there in the title picture this year. And maybe they will be. They don't have the easiest of schedules this year, guys, especially if a few teams elevate. Like at Miami, at NC State before Notre Dame. If one or two of Miami and NC State are better than you expect, that's a really tough 3-game stretch they're coming out of the bye week. How many dominant position rooms does Clemson have? In the past, quarterback's been a slam dunk. Defensive line's been a slam dunk. There have been years where wide receiver was a slam dunk. I couldn't say that about any of those rooms right now. I could say it about linebacker. I think Clemson's got a dominant linebacker room. That's about it. You know what I mean when I say dominant. I mean elite. Not in terms of potential, in terms of what they are entering the season. I think they do have the potential. That's why I'm going 10-2. But it's potential and potential only right now. I go back to this, though. I'm used to seeing them really flex their roster against folks and honestly be able to bring their B- game and win. And I just don't think that's the level this team's at this year. So in lieu of playing a bunch of A- football, there are enough questions that linger with them, and these are first world questions, but enough questions that linger to where I do see a couple of losses out there. And with that in mind, I'm going 10-2 as the most likely record scenario for Clemson.